If you are in your 20s and you think you're smart and you think you're clever and can manipulate people to get what you want, please watch this video, because that's how I was like in my early 20s. I thought I was smart, I thought I was clever, I thought I could manipulate people, especially women, to get what I want. And I learned the hard way how it felt like to be on the other side. So this story is gonna be how I handled being played. So who you hang out with influences who you become. There is a reason why the saying, you are the average of the 5 people around you, is so popular. Now, back when I was around 20, 21 years old, I got my first internship at BlackBerry, which was in Waterloo, Ontario. So me being from Vancouver, Canada, I had to spend a year away from my family, so I flew over to Waterloo in order to do my year-long internship. It was the first time I lived away from my parents. So there was a lot of things I had to learn. I had to learn how to do groceries, I had to learn how to do my laundry, and I had to learn how to cook, all of which was a pain in the butt, but it was well worth it because I had something that I have been dreaming for a long time, which was freedom. In addition to that, I also had the chance to bring a girl home without the embarrassment and awkwardness of running into your parents, which was always one of the big reasons why I never brought a girl home in high school or even in my early days of university. Well, that was the vision anyways, because as a Vancouver kid who was raised very sheltered, I didn't go sleep over at friends or go on vacations or anything because we were low income. Going to BlackBerry and living alone for the first time, I had a lot to learn. So at the time when I joined BlackBerry, they were still kind of in their heyday, although they were on the decline. So what happened was I landed in Toronto and I lived in Waterloo, right? So that is around a 1.5 hour drive. And this was the most amazing thing because when I left the plane, they actually had a limo waiting for me to drive me to my place in Waterloo. And that is amazing because as an intern, you literally have no value. So the fact that they had a limo waiting for me to bring me to my place in Waterloo, which is an 1.5 hours away, that is going above and beyond. So I don't know if it was going above and beyond or BlackBerry just liked to spend money, but they also spent money on a lot of things that were, I would say, a waste of money. So one of that was for all the interns that started together, they would host kind of like a networking event or an intro, so all the interns get to know each other. And I attended one of those networking events where people got to know each other to make friends so they can have a great time while they were working at BlackBerry. And it was there where I met this really good friend of mine, and he was also Cantonese, was also from the same city, which is Vancouver, and he has already been there for a year. So he was telling me that he liked working for BlackBerry, doing this internship, enjoying his freedom so much that he extended his internship by a year. So this friend of mine, he was just a couple years older than me. But when I met him at that networking event, I was so surprised because he was able to go and converse with basically everybody, which surprised me because we were basically the same, right? Except he's just a couple years older than me. But he was doing things that thought I would never be able to do. You know, I was a shy, introverted Asian kid, Chinese kid from Vancouver, born from immigrant parents like him, but we were just raised so differently. I stutter, I double think or overthink about what I would say when I was conversing with people, so that always made me nervous and socially anxious. But for him, it was just easy. He had this confidence that I did not have in myself. So I was very happy to befriend him. And over the next couple of days, couple of weeks, he actually invited me out to go hang out with him. He showed me the ropes, showed me around the city what there is to do in Waterloo, Ontario, which was a lot of partying, a lot of drinking, and a lot of clubbing. But that was all new to me as a kid that was sheltered. So it was extremely fun. And during that time, he also introduced me to a bunch of his friends who were all big party people. and they were also big players. And for the entire year, I basically hung out with that group. And I was just amazed at how charming these people were. I mean, they were just getting dates, getting laid, man after man, woman after woman, because one of them was gay. And I was just there absorbing it, experiencing it all. So I remember every night I went out with these people, my jaw dropped. So I tried to do a lot of what they did, and every single time I would fail, you know. It was frustrating because I went out, I partied, I clubbed with them, I did what they did, I drank with them. I drank way too much, and that's one of the things I regret, but it is what it is. And you know, I came to Waterloo as a virgin and I left as one. So by the time I left, I had one mission in mind, and that mission was, all right, how do I become a player like all of these people I hung out with at Waterloo? And I'll talk more about this later on in the video, but the people that I hung out with, who I thought were players manipulating people to do what they wanted, weren't actually players. What they were is they were incredibly charming. So I had a difficulty understanding the difference between being a player and being charming. They were just very comfortable in their own skin. Whereas for me, I wasn't comfortable, I wasn't confident at all. And that made sense because I was only 21 years old, right? A lot of the guys and girls that I hung out with during that time, they were well into their 30s. They've lived a life, they've lived alone, they were responsible to a certain extent. Whereas for me, I was just 21. And that was my first time living away from my parents. And that was my first time living in a rented home with roommates other than just staying in the basement of my parents' house. So I hate talking about my early 20s because it was the worst part of me. But I do realize that I have to talk about it because if you're in that age right now, it's going to help you avoid a lot of the mistakes that I made in my 20s. And it's not just in your 20s. I mean, there are a lot of 30, 40, even 50-year-olds that are living the way I lived in my 50s. And my ultimate conclusion is that the way I lived in sin and hedonism, it ultimately gets you nowhere. After BlackBerry, I returned home with a hefty savings of around 20 to 30 grand, right? So once I returned home, school started up again, but it was tough because I had this taste of freedom, and like an addicting drug, that's what I wanted again. I wanted to be free. I wanted to be on the road again. So as quickly as I came back home to Vancouver, after 8 months of studies, I decided to go on exchange. And exchange was going to be half a year, and it's gonna cost some money. So that is where I ended up blowing a lot of the money that I saved up from my internship at BlackBerry. So one of the things that late bloomers like me worry about in their early 20s is losing their virginity. That was something that I lost later in life. And I remember that during that time in my early 20s, all of my school friends, everyone at BlackBerry, they have already lost it. They have experience. And that made me feel like a loser. That made me feel that there was something that they've experienced that I haven't, that I wasn't normal, that I wasn't worth it. I just felt so behind compared to them in life with the experience that they had. So it was crucial for me to get that inexperience fixed. And side note, if this is you, then I know you're not gonna listen, but people do not care whether you are a virgin or not. How do I know this? Because when I was living in DC, I attended a men's event, which was hosted by the Roommates, which is a big YouTube channel, though I think right now they are defunct, but they hosted this event for men to learn how to be men. And I remember that there was this one 21-year-old, and he was just so brave, so courageous. And he told everybody, like there was a group of 100 men, that he was a virgin and he felt left behind and a loser compared to all of his friends who had had experience, and he was just felt like he was in a rush to lose it. He was saying how he just wanted to get it over with and that he did not feel like a man because he was still a virgin. And there was two things that I thought of at that point. One is that this kid, 21-year-old kid, he was Middle Eastern. And I could hear from his voice that he came from a conservative family with morals and values. And I would probably go as far as to say that he was heavily influenced by Muslim culture, which, you know, sex is like a big no-no. I knew that for him, in his core, he wouldn't let himself just sleep with any random girl. But at the time, he was like me in the past. He wanted to be a player and he was focusing on the game. And the second thing that I noticed was, I can only speak for myself, not all the other guys in the room at that time, was that I could care less whether he was a virgin or not. That was not my problem. I have problems of my own that I need to focus on. So you being a virgin, that means nothing to me. I have bigger problems to deal with. And I feel like every single guy in that room felt the same way. All of that is to say that, son, if you think that people care whether you're a virgin or not, the fact is that they don't. They don't care one bit. It's just that you think they care. But I would like to add this one tip, that if you are one and you manage to get a girl in your bed the first time, don't tell them you're a virgin. They don't need to know that. Just go fake it till you make it, because nothing turns them off faster than knowing that you're a virgin. And let me tell you, that's just from personal experience. So back to the story, I decided to go do an exchange at Helsinki, Finland. And I had the mission of losing my virginity. I remember the grand plan. I remember the grand plan of employing what I learned at BlackBerry on my exchange, because I learned how to party, I learned how to drink, I learned how to club, I learned how to converse with people, now how to do small talk. I was ready. I learned how to play the game, but that was exactly the problem. I treated it like a game. So I just want to sit down for this part because it is super important. Before I get to how I handled being played, let me share with you the lessons of learning to play the game. Now, if you are like me, you are an Asian kid that is raised by a traditional immigrant family, or you come from a conservative culture, if you go and try to play the game, 90% chance you're going to fail every single time. And that is because you're raised in a culture with values and morals. You're raised to treat people like people and not pawns on a chessboard. And you might not even realize it, just like how I didn't realize it until like a decade later. Those morals and values, they are in you, and when you act in a way that's different from those core values, that's gonna cause misalignment and you are not going to attract anyone. Believe me, I tried. So there I was, I flew into exchange and I interacted with people very shallowly and not deeply at all. And I remember that the girls that I was attracted to, that I am still attracted to, are the ones that didn't give it away easily. And I think most men prefer those girls. It's like that old saying goes, you know, if it's too easy, then it ain't worth it. So I think that a lot of these girls, they actually preferred to get to know someone deeply, which was not me, because I marketed myself as someone who was shallow. So I didn't really get a lot of interest. So how it ended was that I flew into Helsinki, Finland, I flew into exchange as a virgin, and I flew out and left as a virgin. So with that story out of the way, how did I handle being played? So if you are on YouTube and you're also trying to become a content creator and you're wondering how videos go viral, then check out keepviews.com, because I made it to help me create better videos as well. I could go give it a URL of a viral YouTube video and it'll do an analysis with AI and tell me what elements exactly made this video go viral. I could just reuse those same elements in my own videos to give it my own videos a higher chance of going viral themselves. So if you're curious about how to make your videos have a better chance of virality, then check out keepviews.com. So there is this rule called the third date rule, which seems to have come from the show Sex and the City. And there are a lot of people that actually follow that rule or some variation of that rule without knowing that following that sort of rule or the variations of it is what will get you played. I remember coming back from exchange with my V card intact. I dived deeper into darkness. I actually started reading The Game by Neil Strauss, which was one of the pickup artist books that really made a big splash on the ocean during that time. And let me tell you that if you are a child of traditional immigrant families or you come from a conservative culture, none of that crap works. Like the cold approaches, the peacocking, the push and pull, making people feel bad, negging, that is all of the things that anyone with morals or values can sense right away, and it quite frankly makes you feel like a fake. But if you think it'll work, you can try it. I mean, it will probably work on a lot of those people that don't have morals and values. But at the end of the day, you do not want to associate with those people because they're gonna taint you. So one of the things that the PUA stuff really taught me was how to talk to strangers. It really got me out of my shell. And thanks to that, that was actually how I lost my V card. So what happened was that I went to a club one late night and I actually met a girl and her friends there. Actually ended up exchanging numbers with this girl. And another night later, I met up with her again with her friends. We partied and I managed to get her away from her friends and I took her home. So that was when I learned that when it comes to a woman, you actually do not need to go on dates to get laid. When a woman wants you, she wants you. Though with this girl, she actually did not have many morals and values back then, but hey, neither did I. Now, during that same time, I also met this other girl at a Starbucks that I really, really liked. And the only PUA stuff I did with her was a cold approach. Other than that, I just started talking with her and getting to know her. But the more I got to know her, the more I liked her. So I was setting myself up for a big heartbreak. All right, brother. Take care. Stay warm. All right, that was pretty wild. Had a friend that recognized me on the train, saw me on the YouTube channels. But we are here at Cedar Station, trying to get to church, upper room. So long story short, the girl that I really liked, she ended up with another guy. And it made sense, makes sense now because we were around the same age and I really believe that girls date a bit older than most. That means that, you know, when you're 23, then she would probably likely date someone around their 30-year-olds. That's around my experience now as well. But she was more mature and she had a lot more morals and values. And I was heartbroken, to be frank. I remember vividly that I got a text from her one afternoon because I wanted to ask her out to coffee. And she told me that she was going on a weekend getaway with her new boyfriend. And I remember it vividly. I was there, my heart palpitated and my vision blurred and I was running short on breath, and that never happens because I was relatively fit. So luckily I was standing next to the couch because the next thing that happened was I actually lost all strength and power in my legs and I tripped over and I luckily just fell on the couch trying to catch my breath. I mean, ouch. Instead of becoming the player that I thought I was becoming because I was juggling two girls at the same time, I ended up with nobody. I was alone. Not to say that I had anybody, because one was friends with benefit, and that friends with benefit eventually fizzled out. And the girl that I really liked just wanted me around for attention, it seems. And once she found someone better, she just tossed me to the side. So the ending of that was pretty terrible because I ended up pretty sad and depressed. I was at rock bottom, and I was living with that agonizing feeling of not wanting to wake up. You know, when reality hurts so much more than your dreams, you just want to sleep forever. And you know, you want to cry, but there's that old saying that men don't cry, and I really believe in that saying, so I didn't cry. And I don't know if that's probably emotionally unhealthy. But in hindsight, it was great because that was when my evolution started. Because you know what they say, when you're at rock bottom, there's nowhere to go was up. And up is where I went, though through no means other than pure grit and hard work. I went through the slog, and through all that trouble and pain, I came out and I learned how to become charming. So let's talk about that next. So after I was dumped, let's put it this way, I was unable to love for a long time because I was unable to trust. And I don't know if you've ever felt this, I'm sure you have, is that after you've been hurt again and again so many times, you lose the ability or find it really hard to invest in anyone else because you're afraid that if you invest again, if you love again, that it's all gonna end up in flames. So you don't, because you were afraid to get hurt again. And that was me. And I read through a ton of personal development and self-growth books to try to help me get over that problem. I failed. I was unable to do it. I was unable to get over that sense of distrust. So I lived a life of, all right, in order for me to love you, you have to do this, this, and this. That will prove to me that you are worthy of my love. How unhealthy does that sound? Because that sort of love is conditional. And there's where the conflict came in, because that sort of person that can do every single point in your list of requirements does not exist. Nobody is perfect like that. Nobody except Jesus. And I'm gonna keep this story short because I've told it in a lot of my other videos. It was the start of 2023. I was super lost in life. I didn't know what to do. I just felt stuck. So I decided to go to church. There was this really nice church when I was living in DC at the time called Passion City Church. Decided to go to Passion City Church every single Sunday for the rest of the year. I met some brothers and sisters there, and they were extremely kind. They were welcoming, encouraging, inviting. Even though they didn't know me, they asked me to come to coffee with them. They bought me coffee, bought me lunch, and more than anything else, they prayed with me. And that's exactly what I needed, actually. And from them doing that, I started naturally diving into Jesus. I started reading the Bible, and not to get preachy at all. That's not my intention. It's just how it happened. And through reading the story of Jesus and his showmanship of how he showed us unconditional love by dying on the cross and paying for our sins with his blood, that was the start of how I learned to love unconditionally. So it was not an easy year because to be found meant that I had to face my demons. I had to face the skeletons in my closet, which I was running from. You know, my heart dropped when I had to admit that I was prideful, because in order for me to love someone, I required that they love me first, that they put their heart out first, and that meant that my love was conditional. My entire interaction with people was transactional. And you know what happens when all your interactions are transactional? You feel more alone than ever. So it was incredible because on my Facebook account, I would have a friends list in the thousands, but I have never felt so lonely than ever before. But you know what? God did some weird things to me. He brought me brothers who accepted me for who I was, despite my imperfections and my sins. You know, at that time, I was wondering, like, why are you guys so kind to me? Why are you opening up your arms in invitation? And why are you guiding me to salvation? That was what I was thinking to myself when I met these guys. They prayed for me, they listened to me about my challenges, about my past, and that really opened up my heart. I was really wondering why they were able to love so unconditionally, because at that time, I wasn't able to do that. As I talked to them, I discovered that they went through, well, most of them went through the exact same thing I did. They lived in hedonism, lived in sin until they found Christ. So the only reason, as I came to the conclusion, was that they were able to love unconditionally because they knew that Christ saved them from sin and his love for them were unconditional. So ultimately what I found were believers, imperfect as they were, they tried to model Jesus and live every day according to his teachings. And I found that incredibly charming. So what I did next was I tried to follow in their footsteps. I started reading the Bible, really trying to get to know what Christ did and who he was and what his teachings were. And slowly but surely, that started to change my heart. That started to change who I was inside, the way I spoke, the way I interacted with people, with forgiveness rather than with anger and resentment. That altogether started shifting who I was inside, started changing my vibe. And by changing my vibe, I was able to trust more. I was able to love unconditionally without requiring anything from the other person. So what became a transaction was now an unconditional charity. And that is what I think really helped me become more charming, not just with women, but with everyone I met. Just a simple change of wearing your heart on your sleeves and just going out there and loving on people unconditionally. That was the key of me becoming a little bit more charming than I was in my 20s, hopefully. Anyways, I really hope you enjoyed this story and found value in it. If you enjoyed this video, you might want to check out this other video here.